that we serve an almighty God, and he commands us to care about the nation that we are in.
People need to be equipped on how to live out their faith in the public square.
Personal faith with Jesus is critical for your own health, but it's also critical for the national health.
They really tackle head-on all those really big issues no one wants to talk about.
You explain the difference, as you saw, between Aboriginal traditional religion and Christianity, saying they were incompatible. I actually tend to agree with you.
We're not hearing this stuff in our churches.
The most important thing we can do is to win souls for Jesus Christ.
They are cutting to the quick with the word of God.
The second most important thing is to make sure we can still do the first thing.
Well, g'day and welcome to the Church and State Show. My name is Dave Pellowe. I'm the founder and your host for this episode. We're in the middle of a series called How to Save Australia. The hour is urgent. The need is desperate. Australia is going to hell in a handbasket. You just have to have a look at our population replacement rate. We are below the necessary. I think it needs to be something like 1.1 children per family, and it's about half, 0.5 at the moment. Of course, that's not helped at all by our child sacrifice industry. We kill 90,000 Australians a year in the womb, but of course we're too sophisticated to do it in the hands of a stone idol called Moloch, praying for a harvest and fertile crops or rain on the land. No, we do it in an abortion clinic with the approval of 2 doctors at any stage of pregnancy for any reason in most states and territories. And we do it for the good of our career, other convenient psychosocial reasons, and probably less than 1% of the time does that have any kind of medical indicated need at all. But that's 30% of the children that should be born in this nation. That's just not a demographic national crisis. That's a moral and spiritual crisis in this nation entirely. We are far from the religious nation we were at founding, at Federation, when 96% of Australians were Christian, and wanted a constitution that began with the words, "The people of New South Wales, Tasmania, South Australia, Queensland and Victoria, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, resolve to form an indissoluble commonwealth." Well, we're far from humbly relying on God anymore. We are throwing parades for our pride in sin. We're a long way from God, and we desperately need reformation. Now, whether or not you believe in God or the need to have his will and ways become part of the nation, I think everyone watching this would agree we need a political reformation. The institutions, the media have all become corrupt. In fact, I don't even think that media profession is half as noble as it once was, and prefer to call them more accurately the lying harlot media, because they're maliciously deceitful. They're maliciously deceitful and they're professionally unfaithful. That's lying harlot media. With me tonight is someone who left Australia for many decades for professional reasons and worked overseas. But he was a previous member of the mainstream media, that once noble profession, and he returned to Australia and was shocked at the way it had declined, the way culture and politics in this nation had declined. And you all, I hope, have watched his show on The Good Source and elsewhere. If you haven't, I'm glad some people have been introduced to it through The Good Source. But that is the host of The Other Side, and joining me in the studio today and right now is Damian Coory. Damian, welcome to the Church and State Show.
Thank you, Dave. It's great to be here. Good to see you.
Well, we're going to get into a deep conversation now, and I don't really know where we're going to go. You've got some thoughts. We've talked about it. The one question for the evening really is how to save Australia.
Yeah, well, I think the answer to that isn't simple, because there's a fair bit of stuff that has to be unwound before we can sort of rebuild again. And we do have to acknowledge that I know a lot of your viewers will already be fully aware of a lot of the things that I'm going to say tonight. So I don't mean to be telling people how to suck eggs, but I think it's important that we always keep discussing these issues.
No, it's true. We don't want to just talk about the problem. We want to talk about solutions, but we also need to talk about, acknowledge, describe, and observe what is the thing that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, and I think the solution lies in understanding the problem first of all. And and a lot of us are blinded because it's very hard, as you know, to be countercultural, and we are swimming in an ocean of leftist assumptions that make us feel like we're a bit crazy sometimes because hang on a minute, I don't quite feel comfortable with this, issues of, abortion beyond 26 weeks, or abortion beyond, whatever you feel.
26 seconds.
Beginning of, well, in your case, 26 seconds, mine probably, 26 hours or something, but it's, there does need to be an acceptance that we are, or some sort of reassurance that we are not, losing the plot, that there is a history there are ideas that existed before this sort of cultural wave that came, and that we have been subject to to a degree of cultural brainwashing. I'm sure I was in the 1980s going through university in Australia. Looking back, I can see how much neo-Marxism was being thrown at me back then.
Yep.
And that I fell for a lot of it. And then I took that into my work as a journalist, and it informed my behavior and my writing and my reporting as a journalist in the 90s and the late 80s in Australia, in terms of issues that I would cover and I would not cover, issues that I would slant and not slant in a particular direction, and my lack of respect for conservatives, my lack of respect for anybody on the right, the instant dismissal and blanket kind of disregard for anybody who didn't have an intelligent left-wing. We were brainwashed with the idea that it was anti-intellectual not to be left-wing, that it was definitely anti-intellectual to be in any way religious. And I was raised Catholic, but I was never exposed enough, I don't think, in the Catholic school system in the 70s to the wisdom of the Catholic Church or the wisdom of Christianity, the wisdom of the Bible, the great theology, great philosophy that exists in these, holy works. And so the tendency to just go along with that and to just dismiss things as being not intellectual or not, worthy of even reflection, reading, or thinking about, that was so fundamental to Western civilization originally, is problematic. Even if you were coming at it with a skeptic's eye, even if I was coming at it as a young atheist and I was looking skeptically at it, I should still have been told to pick the Bible up. We should still have been told to read it, reflect on it, if only purely as a work of history or a work of mythology or however you might want to sort of refer to it. And I think that we lost that. We lost even that. So clever were the left at sort of convincing us that their way was the only way. That infiltration became, and it wasn't just Australia, it's the entire Western world, particularly the English-speaking world, as we know.
That's right.
But that infiltration over the past 50 years, 60 years into all of those cultural dimensions, the cultural capture by neo-Marxist leftism of family, the family, university, primary and high school education now, the media, the church, the bureaucracy, most importantly, because that's what runs Australia, the politics, in conservative politics, or what is supposed to be the conservative side of politics. So we're up against it on every single dimension of our cultural structure. And I think, are we getting worse or better is the question right now. I think it's not getting better yet, but I think it's coming to a head. I think the tipping point, the turning point, as everyone's talking about, since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I think that's culturally impacted the entire Western world. It's not just an American phenomenon.
Yeah.
So, I think things are coming to a head. I think we are reaching a tipping point. I think there's an awakening on the woke side of things. And I think now when people say things like woke, we know what it means. when people try to gaslight us and say, what are you worried about? All you conservatives, all you right-wingers are so obsessed with this or that or the other thing. It's like, no. Nice try with the gaslighting. You've been 50 years at this.
Yeah.
We see it now. You don't like the fact that we're seeing it, so you're calling it out as being, overreaction or gaslight, and you're gaslighting us. Woke is not something made up. Woke is the colloquial slang term, and it was a colloquial slang term for something completely different before it was a colloquial slang term. It doesn't matter. What is it the colloquial slang term for right now?
Yeah.
It's the colloquial slang term right now for neo-Marxist identity politics. Neo-Marxist identity politics isn't made up.
Yeah.
It's real, and it's been around for many, many, many decades. And it's an ideology that seeks to pit people against each other through a dynamic paradigm, a dialectic of oppressor and oppressed. So someone's always oppressed, someone's always a victim, someone's always the oppressor, and the job is to jump on every single social issue there is out there, to identify the oppressed, to get them onto the side of the political left, and to get them angry at the oppressor, the perceived oppressor, and to simplify and reductively reduce all social problems, social ills, social issues that might be complex and nuanced and everything. It's anti-intellectual in the extreme, ironically, down to the most simple binary, right? Oppressor, oppressed, good guy, bad guy. And to hammer that home until you've got the support of the majority, and then obviously you have the political power that comes from that. What we have to resist is that very core, at the very core of that oppressor-oppressed thing is a psychology that we have to look at. And this is something that I'm not an expert in, but I've read a little bit about it. I try to think about it, and that's where I think the change has to happen within us. And I think Christianity may be I believe it is the answer to that on a personal level. That we have to step out of that victim consciousness because it does us no good. And I think the cultural capture extends to psychology, modern psychology as well, to a large extent. But the idea of this victimhood, no matter how challenging or difficult life gets, we cannot afford to fall into a sense of victimhood.
Yeah.
And you have to have something beyond just this existence, this world. And faith in something that will, help you through those times if you are feeling that sort of difficulty or challenges in your life.
I think the explanation for wokeness is and I mean this as an original thought, but it's not an original thought. Like I've heard other people say this: woke is a religion, but I mean this in a super analytical way, like. In the rejection of God, in the rejection and hatred of Christianity, Christianity is perceived, it fits into one of those identity groups that is in the oppressor category. And so they hate Christianity. Marxism has always hated Christianity. But they now have no God and no religion. And the woke is a religion because they have to replace that void. Nature abhors a vacuum. There's a vacuum of ideology and worldview there. And so wokeness is that religion. I don't want to...
No, I know what you mean.
I don't want to get...
It's like Ben Shapiro calls the heart, the hole in the heart, the God-sized hole in your heart.
Yeah.
That you have to fill with something. As a human being.
Well, Scripture says that God has placed eternity in the hearts of men. But the thing here is we see duplicated in wokeness and progressivism and political correctness, we see here a stark resemblance to the Pharisaical ruling class of ancient Israel's culture and society. Sure, they were occupied by Rome, but Rome let them largely self-govern as long as they paid taxes and supported the economy of Rome. But what did the ruling class that Jesus really opposed, really character assassinated, what were the hallmarks of them? One of the first ones was they imagined all kinds of injustices and violations of God's law that needed extra regulation, burdensome regulation upon regulation upon regulation to try and make men perfect. Now, this is all leading to the New Testament ministry of the apostles saying the law was meant to show you that the law cannot make you perfect. You cannot become a good person by obeying the law.
Right.
And so from a libertarian perspective today, we're going to say, and a conservative perspective, we're going to say small government is good because big government is oppressive. That was very much Jesus's message, just saying copious amounts of law and regulation are not going to make you good people. You are never going to be good enough to live in God's presence and to please God by obeying the law. It's not within your capacity to be good.
The interesting thing about the gaslighting I was talking about with the woke stuff, the other thing that people are gaslighting about now is, there is no left and right. There's no left-right dichotomy. Well, sure.
It's a simple paradigm.
There's a spectrum. It's a simplification.
You need a few reference points.
Exactly. And you can, one of the ways that I like to define left and right is to simply say that left believes in large government. It believes in centralized governmental control and authority. And the right believes in decentralized control and authority back to the individual to a certain extent. You'd probably be able to articulate that better than I can in terms of the religious context of that, or how that's played out in the American Constitution or the Australian Constitution in terms of the individual right to liberty, all of that.
Well, let me have a crack. It ultimately comes down to self-government, and not macro self-government, micro self-government, as a synonym for self-discipline. I think God ordained 4 levels of self-government: family government, church government, and civil government. But the American founding fathers believed that we people weren't capable of macro social-wide, society-wide self-government, government of the people, by the people, for the people. We weren't capable of that until we were capable of self-discipline, self-government. My favorite founding father, who I quote in nearly every episode, is John Adams, who said, "Our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people, and it is wholly unsuitable to the government of any other." Which is why American democracy doesn't transplant to the Middle East. They're just not ready to govern themselves. And I hate that. I wish it was different. I wish it weren't true. But it's demonstrably, historically proven that democracy fails.
Well, democracy, democracy doesn't work everywhere all the time. And
it's beginning to not work here.
Right. And I think where it fails is where you don't have, I'll say this without insulting countries that are non-democratic, but you have to have a certain level of education, of civic, but it's more a sense of civic duty. It's education around civics and economics. And I think the British, Stephen Chabura would know better than I, but I think the British introduced their public school system in order to ensure that level of education. So that was they realized that in order to have a successful democracy, you have to have an educated populace, but the populace has to be rightly educated in certain things. Well, and there has to be adequate religious education as well.
I can add to that the Americans in the colony of Massachusetts had a piece of legislation which was introduced into society for the compulsory education of children, and saying that everybody had to go to school, and the town had to contribute to the education of everybody. They said this was for the good of the town, not just for student welfare. They wanted a better society, or city or state, whatever. But the legislation was called Ye Old Deluder Satan Act.
Okay. Take me slowly through that one, Dave.
So Ye Old Deluder Satan Act operated with a few premises. One, is that Satan is the deluder, delusions and deceptions that try to trap and corrupt people, and that the way to solve that problem, the solution, was literacy, so you could read the Bible.
Right.
That by Christian virtue, self-discovered Christian virtue, you could guard against deception and delusion and become a better character and a better contributor and a better citizen for the good of the whole society. So,
There you go. There you go. The importance of having the Bible translated for the populace. Look, I think the other thing too is that you can have all. I would say you can have all the laws in the world. You can have systems and processes up to here. I mean, I've seen government traveling around Asia in my work in my 30s and my 40s. I was very interested in looking at the way different countries operated and why were some countries successful and others not, and the poverty versus the wealth and how everything sort of falls together. And I really believe that you can't have a great country if you don't have individuals with good character.
100%.
Because some of the processes and systems and everything, I mean, I won't name particular countries, but I saw some countries that were, had really amazing laws. I mean, you read the laws and it's like, well, okay, this is very good, very sound law. But you can't, governments can only, thankfully, only impose law to a certain extent. You can't police every little, as much as our modern left in Australia would like to get cameras, inside all of our personal conversations and make sure they're all speaking correctly. And, they're even interfering with people's private lives in the bedroom, et cetera, et cetera. So, they want to be able, the legal profession would love to be able to know and be able to judge and adjudicate every little thing. But at the end of the day, divine justice is you've got to rely on it, because and you've got to rely on the quality of character and substance of individuals within any political system or any judicial system for that system to work. You can't weed corruption out of a police force by setting up another police force to police the police force, because then you've got to weed the corruption out of that one and have another independent commission against corruption.
And that's exactly
another
why communism failed.
Yeah, and it's just
endless levels of. So we're describing the problem really well. What do you think the solution is? What are you doing? What you're a doer. You've come back from overseas. You've seen there's a problem. What's the strategy you've recognised the need for?
I came back and I didn't know what to do. I'd come back as somebody who had 13 years experience as a senior broadcast journalist in Australia. I was pretty senior at Channel 10 and in the commercial radio, talk radio scene. I used to do the drive show on Brisbane radio, and worked at ABC Radio and Triple M news director and all that stuff. I've done all that. Then I went into public relations, had a very good career in PR, ran, the corporate PR side of things, the issues and management. I was sort of simplify it for people by saying we're the people that try and keep you out of the newspaper, not the people who try to get you into the newspaper, the people who try to help you position yourself when something goes wrong, you've got issues, and that is actually, contrary to what a lot of people think, it requires a lot of ethical work to build trust. I mean, genuine trust, and there are dubious operators out there, but there's dubious operators in journalism as well. And it's all about just trying to kind of build trust with stakeholders, and to do that, you have got to act ethically over time. So I never had I had fewer sort of ethical conflicts, I felt, in public relations than I did even in journalism. But it's the art of communication. So my skill set was in just, how do you communicate stuff, right? It's focused on the actual communication, the delivery of messages, and talking and teaching, training people how to speak. It's not that complicated, but that was my skill set. So I thought, well, I'll come back and just contribute. When I came back, I thought I can contribute in media, or I can contribute in politics. I lasted about 3 weeks in the Liberal Party. Because, it took me a long time to understand why, and I probably won't go into that here. I think people who watch The Other Side perhaps have heard that story many times. But basically, there are major issues with that political party. It's been, in a sense, it's had its own cultural capture, as we all know.
100%.
And it's bureaucratically run, right? It's not really interested like any old large organization, there has to be deliberate systems put in place for review and reflection. And those undertaking, when you do a review and a reflection, it has to be done objectively. And when they do those post-election reports, they don't always do that. There's a lot of wrangling that goes on. Anyway, I don't want to get into the problems of the Liberal Party, but suffice to say that there wasn't too much I could do. It's the old story of you can offer to help. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, only one, but the light bulb has to want to change, right? And no one's going to listen to a guy who's just come back from overseas, despite my CV. I naively thought, I've got this CV. Look at my CV. I've achieved all this. I've done all this. I've got, and just handed that around and thinking somebody would want to, work with me in some capacity. And of course, if you have that experience, then you're perceived probably more as a bit of a threat. So people tend to push you away. Anyway, the Liberal Party was the Liberal. That was very brief. And then I thought, okay, well, my real skill is in media. So I started the podcast, an audio podcast, which was how The Other Side started in late 2020. And then it got picked up by Discernible in Melbourne. It went to a video thing, and we did that for a year with them. And then by 2022, we still had small audience. So I decided to had sort of explored the Libertarian Party and got involved with them when they were Liberal Democrats, and was helping Campbell Newman in Queensland with the Senate campaign, then decided to run in one of the federal seats in the 2022 election. The time just flew by, and it was all then it was the end of the year, and then and so I mean, what I was trying to do was politics and media, just use my expertise in that area.
So you started The Other Side. You're getting what, 10,000 plus views a week per episode?
It's taken 10,000 views per episode, and then we segment each episode into
and the
5
clips are getting
segments,
a whole lot more.
and so those 5 segments go out in full. So the show goes out sort of twice in 2 different formats each week, and across each segment we average about 20,000 views on YouTube. Then it goes out on other platforms and gets a few thousand more, and then we do the super short content stuff, which is like the 1-minute clips that you see on TikTok and on X, and they get a few thousand more every week. So look, I mean, for an Australian podcast, it's doing really well. I'm a business guy, run sort of big PR firms and have an MBA and all that sort of thing. So I'm constantly looking at ways to make it to make sure that it's commercial and stands on its own 2 feet. Australia just isn't. We've got a lot of issues with the fact that Australia is not big enough audience-wise, and the revenue coming out of Google Google owns YouTube, so the ad revenue you get out of that is not big enough to sustain something in Australia with the size of our audience. So what happens to Australian podcasters is they start doing American content. And we have not done that. We do a little bit of American content, but we always do it from an Australian perspective. And our main story is always Australian. We're an Australian news show primarily. So for that reason, and we have 90% Australian audience, which is great. But it means that our YouTube numbers are a little lower. The revenue's low. So, the other thing too is I think, the only platform in Australia that you can go out on is YouTube. You can't say, well, we're leaving YouTube, we're going to go to Rumble like you can in America. Or if you get kicked off YouTube, go to Rumble. So we are totally beholden to Google, which is scary, right? Because I mean, already you've got one company controlling most of because YouTube is TV for kids. It's not, they don't do TV like we did TV when we were younger. Right. That YouTube is their TV.
Yeah.
So there's these issues. But look, the left like it when everything's controlled and in the hands of one controllable entity.
Yeah.
I personally think e-safety is the next step in the process of sort of censorship. And
here it is.
Yeah. So we're just kind of, it's not looking great in that sense.
Yeah.
We've got to be vigilant. It's very hard to build a business on top of, with a small market, right? As you know, it's very hard to get one of these things being commercial. And then it's very hard to have a sense of security and partnership with when you're on a platform that doesn't have any relationship. You're just a machine. You know, you're just talking to, you'll upload your show, and if they don't like what's in there, the algorithm says this, we don't like this bit, and this is being demonetized. It's like, oh, okay. How do I appeal? It's like, well, you can't. You can appeal. We'll let you know in 2 weeks. Well, that's no good if you're a weekly news show. So all sorts of issues with that. And you don't feel that comfort or trust with the platform like that. That said, we've been YouTube hasn't really hamstrung us too much. It's been very helpful. I'm sure it's a great platform, and but yeah, you are totally reliant upon them. It's not the greatest business model.
No, I don't monetize at all through the platforms. They constantly invite me to Facebook, etc. I'm like, there's no way I'm building an income stream dependent on you. So
we don't touch Facebook at all because of Facebook's left-wing history and what they did to us during the election and 2022 and COVID and everything. I mean, it's just too much time.
I'm just entirely viewer funded.
Well,
and
you're a good man.
And it's
we're about 50% funded. We're probably about our production would be 50% funded by Google.
And it's very hard to scale and grow and sustain when and look, Australians don't like paying for things.
No, we're relying on charity, and I mean, if you're paying for a bunch of $5, I mean, you can get Sky News for $5 a month. That's a lot of content for $5 a month, right?
Yeah,
great shows, good presenters, it's all good. So we come along and say, could you please give us $5 a month? That's, we've only got one weekly hour-long show. I hope you like it. I hope it's more, concise and a good summary for you and all of that. And you like our stance, and we're independent. This
is a pitch to Sky News to put Damian Coory's other side show in that content and pay for views for it, because it might just be one of the best shows on your platform when you do.
Well, it's it's tough. And I think asking people to pay more money for that, to be constantly. So we've got about 300 paying subscribers after about a year of asking people to help us out. And I'm flattered by that. I think it's amazing that 300 people are giving us, $5 to $10 a month. So that's great. It isn't going to sustain a highly produced, costly production like their shows, but it's a great start. You put that in combination with the Google money, which is, again, a bit small, but all these little bits come together, but it's still very hard to make that commercially viable. So, for me, it's been a labor of love, unfortunately, for 5 years. But I've been very fortunate in my life, and it's my little way to give back.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much longer.
Absolutely. But it is an investment. I want to acknowledge that. I thank you for your investment, because I know I make the same investment.
Yeah,
I don't do anything else. This is it. And it's a labor of love. It's a mission, not an occupation. You get called a grifter by people who have a low intellect and can't reason an argument of any substance against the ideas you have, so they just insult your motives for doing it. But if I was doing this as some kind of get rich quick scheme,
there's a lot of better ways to make a buck.
Probably quit and join Amway.
lemonade stand. Could you?
Look, Damian, let's wrap this up with, I guess, some practical advice and thinking for the average viewer.
Well, I think you've got to do something, right? I mean, that's how we got on to indulgently talking about ourselves. But I think you've got to try to give back and try to do something. And I mean, I could be coming to the end of this cycle of what I'm doing, but I'll go and do something else. There's got to be some contribution. Try to look at your talents. Try to look at what it is you've got to offer, and it could be anything that you do in your work. You can make a contribution, right? And just in service of people, just in in small sacrifices that you might make. I've been listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson talking about sacrifice lately, because I've been a bit in two minds about, part of me wants to, I'm getting on, I'm a bit older than you, and I'm thinking, I'd like to retire quietly now. I don't really want to be, I don't want to be the face of, hey, because you get attacked, you get attacked by the left, you get attacked by the right? You get attacked by everybody when you're doing this stuff. You also get a lot of lovely comments. And there's a lot of really supportive, wonderful, nice people out there. But, you know, you lose your privacy. It affects your family.
Have you got ideas on what people should do? Where energies are poorly spent, where they're well spent? Should people join the Liberal Party? Should people join any party? Should people sign petitions?
You've just got to you've got to join a party. You've got to do something. And again, I think it's you that I quote on this mostly from a Church and State a few years ago when you said, I think you had a panel on this very question, and you said at the end of it, you know, doesn't matter if you join the Liberal Party or you don't join the Liberal Party, whether you work from inside or outside, but join a party. Or if you don't want to join a party, because obviously there's obligations and issues with that, if you don't want to align yourself fully with a party, just pick the candidates you like. I think was another thing you said, and go help the candidates, right? But contribute and be involved. We can't sit back and criticize the system and allow. This is the thing the left do very well. They're involved, number one. Okay, they rely on a lot of the students, the unemployed. They're time rich in a way that we aren't. Because if you've got, you know, productive business people and small business people in particular, I think part of the left strategy is to drown small business people in bureaucracy and red tape, so they haven't got any time to do anything else. But it's very hard to be political when you're a working person and you're a family person, and they tend to be the more conservative side of people of the community. Students, the unemployed, people on welfare are time rich. They might be money poor, but they're time rich. And of course, the left uses all of its channel, you know, its organizational structures are very professional. The Greens are professional. Labor is professional. The unions are very professional. You've got the think tanks like the Australia Institute, which have become very radically left-wing, much more than it was previously, now that it's sort of under a more green sort of orientation than a Labor orientation. You've got PR firms that are explicitly left-wing. And get behind and are channeling resources. And there's money coming through the union movement. There's money coming through the Labor Party. You've got woke business, woke corporations. You've got the capture of capital through superannuation. One of the smartest things the left ever did was get control of capital, because in most countries, it's the left is Labor and the right is has control of capital. In Australia, $4 trillion of superannuation money. I think it's 2 trillion of that sitting with industry and public sector union super funds. Right. So the left have got this control of capital in Australia, so they can guide and direct. They have great professionalism around social media, and they pretty much have captured our law schools, which means they've captured the future of law. The bench, the lawyers, the prosecutors, everything, and the bureaucracy. And they're professional. And that's the thing. So I think whatever you can do on the right to contribute to diminishing the cultural capture of these institutions, in whatever way you can do that, whatever small way we can do it. It's David and Goliath battle. But they must be getting a bit nervous. They're getting a bit more, you know, tetchy lately. So, you know, media attacks, hit pieces coming out on people on the right. Campion College being under attack this week in Sydney.
Crazy.
You know, the only university in Australia, probably the only college, or one of the very few, that is explicitly non-left wing.
Let me encourage you, if you are looking for somewhere to send your children, send them to Campion College. I would say don't send your children to university at all, unless they really have a calling to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. There's very few professions that should require a university education. You'll make more money than most university graduates if you go and get a trade. But Campion College will educate your children who've been through any kind of school system. It is brilliant, classical, liberal arts education. And I'm talking, they don't give your children a qualification for a job. They give your children qualification for a life. They give your children an education on the great thinkers, the great literature in history, the great philosophies and theologies. This is an incredibly important school, which is precisely why the left and the lying harlot media, but I repeat myself, hate it. Campion College is worth defending and worth investing in And it's a very good thing to do before you even think about what you want to do with the rest of your career. Well, we have to wrap it up, but let me summarize. Australian
Can
independent
I make one
media,
more point on that back of what you just did there?
we do have to wrap it up. So
Yeah, but just very quickly, money. Where are you putting your money, right? Think about where you're putting your money and where you're putting your time. Everybody's got to do that. We are going to, on the center right and the right, we are going to have to be a lot more or show a lot more discretion. We cannot keep funding the left.
Yeah.
We have got to stand up now and push back at every point. You've got to take your time, your eyeballs, your attention, your money, everything, and direct it away from the left, because that's how they make their money.
Yeah.
You know, so no more buying the Sydney Morning Herald when they write hit pieces on the right. No more listening to the ABC or supporting the ABC. You know.
Yeah.
And then think about it in beyond, and no more supporting schools that, you know, oh, it's okay, I'll just send my kids there because of that. No. Is there a school next to you that is doing the right thing? Support those initiatives, support those schools, and then promote, evangelize as much as you can.
Absolutely.
For the right stuff among your friends and your families, and for truth. Yeah, exactly.
And the way you can support truth is by supporting Damian Coory and the other side.
And this is what the left do.
They do it
really well.
Watch the Good Source. You can find Damian Coory's other side show on the Good Source, goodsource.news. You can find it on YouTube. Go to Damian directly and become a part of that. Follower, supporter. At the very least, watch, click, share. Make it worthwhile putting all the effort in that. And he puts a lot more effort into his shows than any average journalist I know. There's a lot of production and research goes into that. And secondly, Damian was saying, to save Australia, get off your bum, get into it. Get into a party or an election at least, and make it happen. Be a contributor, not an observer wondering what went on and why people didn't do it properly.
And phone up and complain when you see things you don't like, because that's what the left do.
Yeah.
They do it really well. They do it all the time. They do it in an organized way.
Yeah.
Get on that phone and call those brands and businesses and say, well, okay, the left's pressuring you to do X, Y, Z and take that person off it and not advertise on that. I'm not going to buy your product if you do cancel them.
Yeah.
Right. And then put them in that double bind where they're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Because they've been taking the easy way out for too long.
We can't be observers anymore. That's
it's
the lesson from this episode. Have you got a final thought for us, Damian?
That was it. That was the final thought. Fight, you know, make sure you're in there, make sure you're making those decisions and making those little incremental actions. And don't underestimate the power of many little actions.
Yeah.
Right. Do lots of little things and push back and tweet and say, have your say when you don't like stuff. Speak up at school, speak up when it's difficult, speak up to HR, speak up about stuff you don't like in a polite, sensible way, you know, and be smart about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Damian, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks always for having us. It's great to be here.
That is this episode of the Church and State Show. We're in the series How to Save Australia, and I hope that was helpful for you. Watch as many of these episodes as you can. We're going to be having lots of conversations with lots of people. There'll be common threads. There'll be original ideas. There'll be religion, there'll be politics, there'll be culture, there'll be logic. But really, you cannot be an observer. That's got to be the takeaway. If you'd like to come to a Church and State event, we're about to have one in Adelaide, 1 week away from today at time of recording, on Saturday, the 11th of October. Head to churchandstate.com.au for lots of information, tickets, etc. But this particular event, christiansvote.com.au. We're going to have a preview of the South Australian election. It's an election rally where we're equipping and educating Christians to vote like a Christian. Imagine that. I'm Dave Pellowe. This is the Church and State Show. It's been fantastic having you with us. Thank you and see you.
Our job as Christians is to let the light shine, but also resist evil. So you're a salt and light. And so without being activists on every issue, pick your issues very carefully, the ones that you really feel are bad for our society, and then take action.